All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. As many of my regular viewers know, I am a drummer. And when I was 10 years old, practicing on my tiny orange sparkled drum set and listening to the radio to get inspiration from other drummers, my guest was one of those players. So it's a real honor for me to welcome Mr. Stan Lynch. Stan, good to see you, man. Thanks for being here.
Well, what brand was that kit?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. It was,
Wow.
it could fit in your back pocket, basically. It was a starter kit. I got it for, I don't know, maybe $75 from a family friend,
Yeah.
and would sit next to the radio and try to play along. And, that's when I got into your former band, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and listened to a lot of those tracks. And I'm still playing almost 40 years later. So, first of all, I thank you for your early inspiration as a player. They certainly helped me form my experiences as a drummer and helped me find the joy in playing. So, my thanks to you first and foremost.
Well, that's very kind. You're very generous with the praise. I appreciate it.
Well, there's going to be more praise coming, man, because you're about to release an album with your current band, the Speaker Wars. Comes out next month. And let me tell you, I'll take you behind the curtain for a second because, as a music journalist, I get hit with tons of records, man. I mean, it's insane. So most of them don't get listened to more than once, if at all, just because the volume is so high. Your record comes in, and it just arrived at a time when I had a bit of extra time to put something on. So I put your record on and I listened to that thing 6 times in a row that day.
Wow.
Couldn't stop
Wow.
listening to it, man. It really is a record I've wanted to hear for a long time. Um,
Yeah.
so to kind of use that as an introduction, you have a new band called the Speaker Wars. For fans of the Heartbreakers, I would certainly say it falls within that musical realm. This is a great classic sounding rock band. If you're a fan of the Heartbreakers, the band, Levon, all the classics, all the greats, this album is the continuation of that legacy, in my opinion. So first of all, my congratulations to you on creating such a great work with such fine players. And it's interesting to me because I had thought you had more or less retired from being on stages. I know you've done a lot of work behind the scenes in the music industry since leaving Tom, about 30 years ago, but you're back with a new band and it's been decades at this point. So let's kind of start there because from my understanding, you're talking to me from Florida, which your background is making me very envious right now. Um, but but I know you're in Florida, but the roots of this band, I believe, started in Nashville. So tell me a bit about that genesis and what led you back to being in a band doing a new album after so long.
First off, I think I'll just shut up because everything you said, you said you've been great. I mean, wow. Thank you. Everything you said, thank you. Very kind. Um, yeah, the genesis of the Speaker Wars started with John Christopher Davis and I. He's a singer, a songwriter, guitar player, um, my prime collaborator on this project. We met in Nashville. We were both um, writers at different publishers, and in Nashville, they do blind dates. You know, they'll just say, "Hey, you need to get together with John Davis," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." He's making a record, and I'm like, you have no expectation. And John walked in and he was an immediate soul brother. He was like the little brother I always wish I had. We had the same references musically, from Otis Redding to like gospel to just all these weird things that we just imprinted on it at an early age. We just went, we were both just kind of stunned at the mutual cool that we both liked. And for me, music has always been based on uh, friendship and kindness and joy and creativity. And the secondary effect of it is success and all of the other things that can happen but without all those primary things in place, I'm dead in the water. So John brought all the effervescence, he brought all this fun in the room. And I didn't give a damn if we even got a song that day. That all I cared about was, do you like it? Do I like it? And we developed a kinship. And during COVID, when we were all setting fire to our groceries and burning our homes, and we all, we're all dying. And John and I just decided at some point into it, about 6 months in, if we don't get to work, we're going to just atrophy. We can't go down this way. So he came to Florida, and I have a little recording studio, and we started writing and compiling more material. And I'm babbling, but the process was we just created a lot of material. And I thought it was for John's solo record. And then he kept telling me, like, look, get your butt behind a kit, you got to play this stuff with me. And I'm like, nah, dude, I'm out. And then around that time, Mike Campbell called me and said that his drummer was taking a break, Matt Logg, who's fantastic, and asked if I'd sit in with the knobs. So I kind of dusted myself off and got behind the kit, and it was fun having my old job back. And that's when, around that time, John kept going like, well, if you're going to play with Mike, so basically I was battered into submission. And then it was a lot of fun. And then when I got together with John, with the guys in Texas, he pretty much hand picked these guys. He said, look, you're going to like this guy. And we went through a couple changes, but not many. And we sat down and played, and it was pretty great. It all started to come together. So that's the 50 Cent tour.
Excellent, excellent. And what I'll do is when I post this video, I will include links to the two promo videos the band has out at this point, so people can get a taste of what the sound is on this album. I would say it's one of those few records I've heard in a long time where every song works. Every song really could be a single in its own right. But I gotta tell you, there were a couple that really made me stop and go, "Oh man, this is something else." So there are two songs in particular I was hoping to kind of dive into with you.
Sure.
The first being The Forgiveness Tree, which is really such a beautiful tune. What can you tell me about the creation of that one and how it all came to be for you?
Well, this is where having a good collaborator is worth its weight. John walked in the room, and a lot of times when you collaborate, you kind of come in just open-hearted. Sometimes you have no idea. And John walked in with a pair of Kings. He said, "I have a title," and it was just metaphoric. He said, like, a forgiveness tree. And I went, wow, let me marinate in that for a minute. And it spoke to me because of bad, never having bad blood. To me it was just like, and in a lot of people's lives, I had an earlier life with the Heartbreakers that could have presented itself as a negative scenario. But with forgiveness, if you ask for it and you give it, it's the ultimate gift, man. It's like, so John and I were starting from that place, from a real honest place. And that's where he's really wonderful. Sometimes I can really help him finish his song, and but he's a gifted vocalist, and he's a cool musician. We both have our limitations. Neither of us are particularly we're not, I wouldn't say, we're gifted as musicians. We just know what we like, and we just tend to follow that around. And I like that song as well. I think it's a good one. I think that one will hold up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the video for that song comes out, I think this month, April. Yeah, April.
Mm.
There's a video for that one, probably be in around the 20th or something. And those are the first three that'll be out is Lie, It Ain't Easy, and Forgiveness Tree. Then I think the record comes out the following month. But
Mm.
that'll give you a good idea. But the album's very schizophrenic. I mean, and I like that. I mean, it was curated by a guy named Mike Persterzi, who we were fortunate to meet. We dragged him in as the executive producer and said, let us play you a ton of songs. They're just going to play you material. I'm not objective anymore. I'm just writing, and Mike said, let me pick 10 for a record. And so it's he did this, he actually curated a record for us. And we've got a lot of stuff a lot of juice in the grape, and we're always writing all the time. So I I think we're on first base.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mentioned when we started talking about tradition, the tradition of these classic artists and members of a certain generation, they're departing quite a bit in recent years. For example, we just lost Garth Hudson a few months back, and I'm a huge fan of the band, that
Oh,
their whole thing. And when Garth left, it's like, well, that's it. That's the band. The band has left the building now.
yep.
Who's going to carry on that tradition? And the moment I heard Sit With My Soul, I had my answer because I realized that was a tune that um, is carrying on that tradition, man. So I got to get into that with you because for me, I love all the songs on the album, but that's the one that really, I think 20 years from now, that's going to be my go-to off this record. So tell me a little bit about that one.
Well, I think one of the highest art forms as a writer is, at least for me, is if you can write almost a hymn.
Mhm.
Like I love the simplicity of, I'm not particularly a religious man. I'm not going down that road with you. I'm just saying I love the simplicity of the title of a song. Is it already spells out where the song is going? And I think "Sit With My Soul" was a another one that John, let me give credit where credit's due. I think he walked in with that title, and to me, I had just been through, my mom and dad had just left the building, and so I was experiencing the empty chair, like talking to the empty chair a lot, and you know, and um, and so we share that. Usually, if John and I hear something or we say something to each other, we have a common thread immediately. Like we go, "Oh, uh, you're feeling that. I'm feeling that." And "Sit With My Soul" was exactly that. I mean, I think all he said was those few words, and I went, "You mean like this?" And he's like, "Yeah, exactly." So I I like that about working with John, that we frustrate each other, and we drive each other crazy, but at the core of it, when we both grab a piano or a guitar or sit down, we can kind of melt each other down a little bit, which is a really that's that's where I'm going with all of this. I mean, my managed expectation is in full bloom. What I want to do is do creative work with people that I love and that will love me, and I want it to be heard. That's really that's almost as far as I can think. That's my long-term plan, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I was thinking about this right before we connected. My first exposure to your playing, um, and your former band was the video for Jam and Me,
Hmm.
which what 87 that was. So I must have been 10 years old. And I was exposed to the other videos you guys did back in the day. And you guys had great videos, and this really was the era of MTV. That explosion, of course, now the videos go up on YouTube instead of the label putting the band in a hotel for a week and journalists coming in and out to do interviews. We're doing this over Zoom. The record came through as an electronic file as opposed to a package, so there's a lot of things that have changed even within, the 30 years that you were kind of out of it, at least being up front on stage. So for you, having an album in 2025, a new band, you're obviously promoting things, doing interviews. What's your impression of how things are now as far as working within the industry that currently exists versus the one that had a different machinery behind it?
It's always been broken field running, man. It's never been a route. When you mentioned MTV, man, me, the band, all of my early life happened even before all that. You know, we became musicians as a result of playing bars and clubs. And, we had our 10,000 hours in before we even showed up in LA looking for a record deal. We were already in our mind grizzled we were grizzled, old guys at 19. We were already had an ass whipping that was pretty solid by the time we showed up in California. So we did two records, two albums before MTV even was a thing. So I guess the long version of what I'm getting at is it's always changing. It's always different. The first record came out, we were just an opening act. We opened for everybody all over the world. There was no gig beneath us. So we were championed by a guy named John Scott who understood the radio and heard a song. He heard Breakdown, made us go on the air at 4:30 in the morning to do drive time radio just to get this song played. So it's always been, how do you cut through the chatter? How do you get your product noticed? And there's always that piece of your mind going, well, the cream rises to the top. So if you start with, let's put out the best music we can. And that was one of the things that Tom used to always say was, Stan, let's, take care of the music. It'll take care of you. So don't scrimp in your effort. And that I think is the one commonality between now and 1976 or 81 when you're talking about MTV. You do the best work you can under whatever conditions you're given. Now, sure, a huge video budget, fine, but as long as you put it into the product, you get the best cinematographer, you build the best sets, you don't just blow it out your butt, you just, and so I think today you do the best with what you got. And what I got is I've got good musicians. I've got a skill set that's deeper than it's ever been. I've got a good tackle box full of tricks, if you will, or just knowledge from working with all the different artists I've worked with and different producers. I've kept a real open mind over all these years to continue my education. And now if today's methodology is I got to go door to door, that's what it's going to be. I'm not too proud to say, well, man, back in the day we did it. I mean, that's just, you're one step away from saying, get off my lawn. If you do that, you're that guy.
Right.
So if this is how it is, hey, and I want to play, and this is all I've ever done since I was 13 years old, I'm going to keep doing it, man, until somebody just takes me out.
Excellent. One thing to my ears that has been consistent with you, obviously, is your approach to playing the songs. And we're gonna get very drummer to drummer for a minute, viewers. So, um, one thing I've admired about your playing, and it seems to be common of certain players of a particular generation, where it's not about the bombast, it's about serving the song. And you've always been a player who serves the song. I'm sure you've seen a lot, maybe on YouTube or the reels, those short videos that are on social media, where you have younger guys who are putting as many fills into a song as they can, even playing along to a simple song. They're double bassing it and
Sure.
tripling themselves to Kingdom Come. And to me, yeah, that's great. we can all do that, but why would you want to? You know, it's about being meat and potatoes, I've always found, and serving the song. And I've listened intently to your playing on this record, and you're serving the music. You're not being the star of the show. This isn't Stan Lynch is back with an explosive drum collection. You know, you've always kind of maintained that philosophy. I mean, was that for you something that came naturally, or did you make really a creative decision to be that player who just got it
Well,
done and didn't want to just be, you know, the big spotlight as a player?
well, first off, I can't do that. You gave me way too much credit. Those drummers that are pyrotechnical, they're just phenomenal phenoms. Um, that's a skill in itself, but to me, it's a stupid human trick unless it has an application within a band. It's like, look, I don't, I love it. I love watching a guy that can play a press roll one-handed at 180 BPM with, left-handed. It's like, that's great. But my job was, I never really thought of myself as a drummer. I was the drummer in a band. And that's a distinction with a difference. Um, I wanted the job of the band I was in. So, when I was in the Heartbreakers, it was pretty obvious that all these guys can play and keep time. They're good. So my job, I don't have to be ultra metronomic. I can be sort of fluid and bring in the influences that I liked as a kid and be a little more sleazy or and my playing evolved in the group, over time. It my evolution, it took 20 years to get where I got. And with the Speaker Wars, I'm starting pretty much at the back of the line, phase one. Here's what the Speaker Wars need. If I was looking for a drummer for the Speaker Wars, this is the guy I'd want. So he can get better, he can do more, he can do a lot. But right now, I need him to provide a beat and show the band the architecture of this music. Like, here's how it's going to go. And here's how you're going to pat your foot for 3 minutes. Now, that sounds simple. It's not. It's not. It's something that a lot of younger bands take for granted. They forget that the beat, if you will, is insanely important. And a lot of those great records that I grew up listening to, whether they were Otis Redding or the Stones, some of those records never even had, or Stax records, they never even had a crash cymbal in those records. Like they were just kick, snare, hat. You play the beat, man, and let the song do the work. And so that's a tattooed philosophy in my soul as a drummer. And I've watched, having produced records since playing, I've watched some of the greatest drummers in the world. I've had the pleasure of being on the other side of the glass of these fantastic players. And they always start there. They always start with, what's the feel? What's the beat? What are we looking for? What's the sound you're looking for? What's the intention? The scale, as Danny Korchmeyer used to always say, the scale meaning the energy that's needed to sell this song. Like, do we need frantic? Do we need chill? Like, the scale determined the sound, determined the beat. And I've never been one to come in thinking, well, maybe that's not true. Never. There was a place in the Heartbreakers where I was pretty animated behind the kit. I was blowing a lot of dust back there, but it was fun and the guys were enjoying it. So it worked, but it doesn't always work. But what will generally get you there is the beat. If you can count four and make that stick for 3.5 minutes, you're probably getting close to making a record.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Very well said. I wanted to conclude with a Heartbreakers question because with my viewers, inevitably they would say you had Stan Lynch on, didn't ask him a Heartbreakers question.
Oh, ask away.
Got to wrap it up here, but You know, the history of the band's pretty well known at this point, and there were many highlights. There are also rough patches. It's called being in a band, it happens with everyone. Um, but obviously there was something about this combination of players that worked. You can have the greatest players in the world in a room, but if it doesn't click, it doesn't matter who's there, right? You got to make it work in some way. So when you look back at these guys, Howie, Ben, Mike, Tom, that run where you guys really, the 80s era kind of hit the ground really hard. Um, how would you define the Heartbreakers chemistry? What made that work for as long as it did?
Um, well, we were very fortunate. We had a great songwriter. So that's huge. We had a guy who could walk in and on his worst day had a pretty good idea, like a pretty good story going. And so we all as a band reacted to we started kind of there. Like we'd start with, I don't want to be the one to kill this song. I want to be the one to help this song. And we all had that same common interest and we all really liked each other. And the other thing that the chemistry was, we all didn't have to play at the same time. We had this innate ability to be like, it would go like this, like it was,
Mm.
um, we would intersect in beautiful ways as opposed to this. Like it was what you didn't play was as more important than what you did play. So and we just knew it. Somehow it was never discussed. The band was almost monosyllabic with each other for 20 years. It was like, yep, nope, that'll work. Yeah, don't do that. It was literally they were that chill of a group of guys. No, sometimes we'd unbolt, but we go nuts and scream and dance around the room and flip out. But 90% of the time it was, oh, you're going to go with that? Well, then I'm going to go with that. And it was like we were dressing the same mannequin always, and the mannequin being the song. We were always looking for the right. And, and Benmont is a brilliant, just a naturally, he's trained, but he's also just naturally skilled, like a Garth Hudson. He's one of those guys that can just, if it's one note, he found it. I don't know where he found that one note, but that's a money note. That's a beauty. And he was smart enough not to embellish. He would just, when you watch Benmont play the most complicated song, sometimes it was three fingers and one would be lifting up, or, it was like, wow. But if you took his faders out of the mix, man, it was gone. And Michael was the same way. Brilliant to finding the alternate positions on the guitar. Just had a gift for not using all six strings. Like he'd only use two or three. Tom, great rhythm guitar player. I mean, really great. Had a feel with the back of his hand without a pick that he would just could show you as a drummer. This is the body language I'm looking for, and he could transfer that to you without ever talking about it. Howie was a great, brilliant bass player. Ron Blair,
Mm.
another extraordinary musician. Just he would almost like listen, and at the last minute would find all the connective tissue, and everybody knew their real estate. Like we all knew where we lived to create the proscenium. We all knew where we were in the frame, and it was just like I said, no plan. It was never like we didn't sit down and go, hey, this is what a great band sounds like. It was really, I think, really good fortune. But I have to say, it started with we had a very creative guy who was very driven and was not afraid to come in with ideas, even if some of them didn't work. He'd just come in with a legal pad. He'd been working all night, and it was a good band, and we played a lot of gigs, which I also think people don't get to do as much anymore. We played 1,000 gigs, man, to where we could almost, it was telepathy at that point, You didn't even look up. You didn't have to look at the guys. It was almost like an insult if they did look at you. It was like, what did I do wrong? If, oh God, they're looking at me, you know? So I love that. And I love being in a band today for the same reason, because I want that again. I'm greedy. That's a very addictive situation, So I'm always looking for that with these guys. And it probably frustrates them too, because they're not that band and they shouldn't be, but at least they acknowledge the same way I do that that was a good band. And it's not a bad template, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you've had a tremendous past, and I'm thrilled to know there's great things happening in the present. Again, the album and band called The Speaker Wars comes out next month. Like I said, there'll be plenty of videos and information in the video description. Check this band out. Support Stan and what he's doing today because it's really exceptional work. And thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time and just wish you all the very best, man.
Hey, look, like I said, I'm very grateful that you took an interest, and I appreciate if your listeners, you know, take stock. This is how this works. We're planting seeds, man. You're on the team.
Right on. Thanks again, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.